up, YouTube? We are here today with another Getting Started in POE guide video. Today we're going to be talking about leagues and the various different forms and ways that you can play Path of Exile. So first off, when you first log into Path of Exile, there's going to be several different options for when you create a character. When you click on create a character in Path of Exile, you log in, and so let's go back out to the login screen. You pretend you're sitting down for the first time, or maybe the second time. Maybe you've booted up in the past, but you're just not sure what to play next. And you click create. The game is going to offer you multiple different options for where you want to play the game. The options typically are going to be Standard League, a Challenge League, and then a Hardcore Challenge League. Now you can also play Hardcore Standard, but they don't have a standalone banner for that. So typically there are three banners that are showing on that front page. Typically Standard, Challenge League, and then Hardcore Challenge League. So Standard is where eventually everything migrates to. Challenge leagues last for a set period of time, and then everything migrates from that challenge league into standard. That includes both softcore challenge league as well as hardcore challenge league. Now, the difference between the blue banner challenge league and the red banner challenge league is the difference between softcore and hardcore. If you play a blue banner challenge league, that means that if your character dies, the worst thing that happens is you lose some XP. You don't lose your character, you don't lose items, you simply die and you have to resurrect it either in the act town that you're in or your hideout, or back in somewhere inside the zone, inside the instance. In hardcore, when your character dies, the character is permanently removed from that league. Your character is not deleted, but they are permanently removed from that league and they get sent to Standard League. So there's a very helpful visualization of this right here that you can find on the Path of Exile Wikia. That is a nice little flowchart. It shows you exactly what happens. So if you choose hardcore, whether that's a hardcore challenge league, that's the red line here in the middle, or just regular standard hardcore, if you die, you go to standard. Standard being the big blue line in the middle. If you die in a hardcore challenge league, you go to standard. Then if you play a standard challenge league, or the blue banner, if you're back here looking on the selection screen, it's the middle banner. Right now it's the Incursion League. That's the 3.3 league that everybody's so hyped about right now. At the end of that league, whenever that league ends, typically they're on 3 or 4 month cycles. Whenever that league ends, everything will migrate over into standard. So you'll notice that maybe some of your friends that have played Path of Exile for a very long time, they have a bunch of characters sitting in Standard League, because that's where everybody ends up. That's where everybody goes eventually, unless you delete them. Whereas in a typical challenge league, maybe there are fewer characters that somebody's got. Now, there are also some differences between hardcore solo self-found and softcore solo self-found. So there's some options here. This is a relatively new thing that Path of Exile has done within the last year. They have allowed for the game to be played in solo self-found mode. Now, the description according to the front page login site is this optional mode disables trade and party play for this character. You can convert it back to a regular character at any time. So what this does is this says you're not going to trade with other players in any way, shape, or form. You can't trade currency, you can't buy currency from other players, you can't buy items from other players, you can't sell items to other players. You are, for all intents and purposes, imagine if it's 1998 and there is no internet and you're just playing the game on your computer. That's it. It's just you. So a lot of players choose to play solo self-found if they don't want to be bothered with learning the economy or learning the basics of the economy, or if they feel like, I don't want to worry about whether or not I'm making trades or making money. I don't want to compete or feel like I'm competing in that way. I just want to build a character and see how far I can take the character. Now, there are some advantages to that and disadvantages that we could chat about more in a different video. But solo self-found is available for standard, for your softcore challenge league, as well as for your hardcore challenge league. Solo self-found is supported for every single option that you could possibly want, as well as for standard hardcore, which is great. So you can choose to interact with the economy, or you can choose not to. Let's say you find something that's super, super rare on a solo self-found character. You can always choose to migrate that character over into a trade league and then begin trading. So if you're just looking to learn Path of Exile for the first time and you don't want to get bogged down in a bunch of trading, then maybe solo self-found is the place for you. A lot of the different racers and very popular streamers nowadays actually play solo self-found, because it's considered to be much more of a challenge. You can't simply go out and purchase items to break through a DPS wall or break through a defensive layer that you need in order to get on to maybe progressing in the game. You can't simply buy your way through with the in-game economy. Rather, what you have to do is you've got to craft your own stuff, and you've got to be able to find your own stuff, hence the name solo self-found. So hopefully that's a decent explanation of the different options that you've got. If you're starting out in PoE for the first time, maybe you've got a couple of friends that do play, you're going to want to ask them, do they play Standard, do they play Challenge League, and do they play Hardcore, or do they play Solo Self-Found? Those are some starting basic questions. It's a little bit like if you've played maybe other MMOs where you're faction tied into whether or not you can interact with your buddies or not. This would be the equivalent. So characters in Standard can't interact with characters in a Challenge League. Characters in Hardcore can't interact with characters in Softcore. So definitely make sure that you ask fellow guildmates, fellow friends, or even buddies, or even if you're posting on the looking for group subreddit, or if you're posting on the forums and you're just looking for other players to play, make sure that you denote which league it is that you are playing in. And then the good news is you can always just go back and change which league you're in. You can always just restart a new character, because Path of Exile is such a diverse game and such an in-depth game that there's always going to be more room to learn and more characters to play. So get back out there, Exiles, and enjoy whichever league it is that you're playing in, whether that be Standard, a Challenge League, Hardcore, Softcore, or Solo Self-Found.